September 19th, 1991. The Austrian Alps. Helmut and Erika Simon were experienced hikers. They'd conquered these mountains dozens of times before. Today should have been no different. Just another beautiful day at 10,000 feet, crisp air, stunning views, the familiar crunch of boots on ancient rock. But then Erika stopped. She pointed at something ahead, something wrong. There was a body in the ice. They approached carefully, hearts pounding. At first, they thought they'd found a dead climber. Tragic, yes, but not uncommon in these peaks where nature shows no mercy. Except this body looked strange. No bright synthetic jacket, no modern gear, no ropes. Instead, they saw leather, fur, skin that looked like old parchment, dried and weathered beyond anything they'd ever seen. This wasn't a recent death. This was something else entirely. Something that made the hair on their necks stand up. They looked at each other, the same thought crystallizing in both their minds. This person had been here a very, very long time. They practically ran down the mountain. Within hours, police and a mountain ranger made the climb back up. They confirmed it. A human body, frozen solid, locked in the glacier's grip. They tried to pull it free, but quickly realized they were in over their heads. This required experts, special tools, a proper operation. For 3 more days, the body remained where it had lain for millennia, waiting. Then came the archaeologists, the forensic specialists, the recovery team with proper equipment. On September 23rd, they finally freed the corpse from the ice and brought it down to Innsbruck. That's when everything changed. Dr. Konrad Spindler was a respected archaeologist, a serious scientist not given to wild speculation. When he examined the body, he expected something medieval, perhaps a few hundred years old at most. The radiocarbon dating results came back. He read them once, twice. Then he sat down heavily in his chair. The man had died 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years. Before the pyramids. Before Stonehenge. Before recorded history. This body lying on the examination table had walked the earth when humans were still learning to work metal. When writing didn't exist. When the ancient world was barely beginning. And here he was, so perfectly preserved that you could see the tattoos on his skin, examine his fingernails, study the contents of his stomach. The scientific world exploded. This wasn't just a discovery. This was a miracle. They named him Ötzi, after the Austrian Alps, and as they studied him, a story emerged. A dark story, a violent story. Ötzi had been murdered. The evidence was undeniable. An arrowhead buried deep in his left shoulder, just below the shoulder blade. The wound showed no healing. He'd been struck down and died within hours, maybe minutes. But there was more, much more. Blood analysis revealed something chilling. Traces of blood from 4 different people on his clothes and weapons. Not all of it was his. Ötzi had been in a fight, a serious fight. He'd wounded others, maybe killed them, and then someone had shot him in the back as he fled into the mountains. Picture it. 5,000 years ago, a man running for his life through these same peaks. Wounded, bleeding, desperate. He climbs higher, seeking refuge, seeking escape. But the arrow has done its work. He's dying. He collapses in the snow alone, his pursuers perhaps still searching below. And there he dies. The ice claims him, preserves him, keeps his secrets frozen in time. The gear he carried told its own tale. A copper axe, incredibly advanced for the era, marking him as someone important, someone skilled. A quiver with unfinished arrows, suggesting he'd been interrupted, perhaps by the very attack that killed him. A flint dagger, Sophisticated clothing made from multiple animal hides, expertly crafted. This was no amateur. Ötzi knew these mountains. He belonged here, which made his violent end even more mysterious. Who was he running from? Why did they want him dead so badly they'd follow him into this frozen hell? We'll never know. That secret died with him. News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Global media descended. The Iceman became an overnight sensation. Documentaries were commissioned. Museums fought for the right to display him. Scientists lined up to study him. Ötzi was the most famous corpse on Earth. But beneath all the excitement, two problems were brewing. Two complications that would turn this remarkable discovery into something darker. First came the lawyers. The body had been found near the Austrian-Italian border. Austria claimed him. Then precise measurements revealed he'd been lying 92 meters inside Italian territory. Italy claimed him. What followed was a vicious legal battle that would rage for over a decade. But that was just money and politics. The second problem was far stranger, far more disturbing. People connected to Ötzi started dying. At first, nobody noticed the pattern. Deaths happen, especially around dangerous mountains and elderly scientists. But then the list started growing, and the circumstances started getting weird. Journalists began connecting dots. Researchers started counting names. The deaths were different. Violent accidents, sudden illnesses, inexplicable tragedies. But they shared one thing, one undeniable link. Every single victim had touched, studied, or somehow interacted with the 5,000-year-old corpse of a murdered man. A man whose rest had been violently disturbed. A man pulled from his frozen grave and put on display for the world to gawk at. A man who, according to those who believed, might not appreciate the intrusion. Some scientists laughed it off. Coincidence, they said. Statistical noise. Superstitious nonsense. But others weren't so sure, because the deaths kept coming, and the list kept growing. And deep in their rational, scientific minds, a small voice whispered a question they didn't want to ask. What if the Iceman didn't want to be found? What if disturbing his 5,000-year sleep had awakened something? What if the past, when dragged into the present, fights back? The body now rested in a climate-controlled facility in Italy, kept at precisely -6 degrees Celsius, the same temperature that had preserved him in the glacier. Scientists continued their work, cataloging every detail, publishing papers, making discoveries, and one by one, some of those scientists stopped coming to work. Permanently, the curse had begun. Rainer Henn was 64 years old and at the top of his profession. As a forensic pathologist based in Innsbruck, he'd seen everything. Decades of examining bodies, determining causes of death, testifying in court cases. He was rational, scientific, utterly unflappable. When the call came about an unusual body recovered from the mountains, Henn didn't hesitate. He joined the team traveling to the recovery site, one of the first specialists to actually see Ötzi in situ, still partially frozen in the glacier. He spent hours at that remote location. The wind howled around them as he examined the corpse, taking notes, helping coordinate the extraction. His hands, even through gloves, could feel how wrong this preservation was. Too perfect, too complete. When Ötzi was finally brought to the morgue, Henn continued his examination. He was fascinated, obsessed even with this window into the distant past. He gave lectures about the discovery, traveled around Austria, made the Iceman the centerpiece of his distinguished career. Then, in 1992, Rainer Henn died. He was driving to yet another lecture about Ötzi, a road he'd traveled countless times. Clear weather, good visibility. Then, without warning, another vehicle crossed into his lane. The impact was catastrophic. Hen was killed instantly. 64 years old, experienced driver, dead. The accident report called it a tragic collision. Nothing suspicious, just bad luck. These things happen on the road. Nobody thought twice about it. Why would they? But the mountains remembered. Kurt Fritz knew the Alps like other men know their own backyards. At 52, he was a legend among guides. He'd climbed these peaks in blizzards, in darkness, in conditions that would terrify lesser men. When the recovery team needed someone who could navigate the treacherous terrain to Ötzi's location, there was only one choice. Fritz led them up, watched over them as they worked, helped free the ancient corpse from ice that had held it for 5 millennia. He was there for all of it. Months after Hen's death, Fritz was guiding another group through familiar territory. Routine climb, perfect conditions, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive in the mountains. Then they heard it, a sound like distant thunder, but there were no clouds. Fritz looked up. His face went white. Avalanche. The wall of snow came roaring down the slope like a living thing. The group scattered, desperate, screaming. Some dove behind rocks. Others ran. The avalanche engulfed them all, a white chaos of suffocating powder and crushing force. Then silence. Terrible, absolute silence. Slowly heads emerged from the snow, coughing, gasping, checking themselves for injuries. One by one, the climbers stood up, bruised, terrified, but alive. They looked around, counting. Everyone accounted for, everyone safe, everyone except Kurt Fritz. They found him quickly. The avalanche had struck him directly, precisely, while somehow flowing around everyone else, as if it had chosen him, singled him out. He lay beneath the snow, eyes open, gone. 52 years old, the best guide in the Alps, the only fatality in an avalanche that had swallowed an entire climbing party. The rescuers who recovered his body couldn't explain it. The odds were impossible. But mountain luck is strange, they said. Sometimes it just runs out. 2 men dead now, both connected to Ötzi's recovery. Both experts in their fields, both dying in accidents that seemed to defy probability, but nobody was counting yet. Nobody was connecting the dots. The pattern was still invisible, until Rainer Herzler collapsed. Herzler was 47 and riding high. His documentary about Ötzi's recovery had been a massive success. For 3 days, he'd been at the glacier, filming everything. The frozen body emerging from the ice, the scientists working, the moment of extraction. His footage had gone global, bringing the Iceman's story to millions. His career had never been better. The future looked bright. Then one afternoon, while walking through his neighborhood, Herzler stopped, put a hand to his head, and fell. At the hospital, doctors found the tumor. It was massive. How had it gone undetected? How had it grown so large with no symptoms? Nobody could answer. The tumor was aggressive, unlike anything they'd seen. Herzler deteriorated before their eyes, his body betraying him in ways that defied medical logic. 3 weeks, that's all it took, from diagnosis to death. 3 weeks. He was 47 years old. Now the whispers started. 3 deaths, 3 men, a pathologist, a guide, a filmmaker, all connected to Ötzi, all dead within months of each other, all dying in ways that felt wrong somehow. Too targeted, too specific. Journalists started making lists, started asking uncomfortable questions, started using a word that made scientists cringe. Curse. The media loved it, of course. Curse of the Iceman sold papers, drove television ratings, sparked endless speculation. Reporters hunted down everyone involved with the discovery. Do you believe in curses? Are you worried? Are you next? Most laughed it off. Coincidence, statistics, Life. People die every day. 3 deaths among dozens of people over several years meant nothing. Nothing at all. But one journalist kept digging, kept researching, and he noticed something. One name appeared in almost every scientific paper about Ötzi. One man had spent more time with the body than anyone else. Dr. Konrad Spindler, the archaeologist who'd revealed Ötzi's true age, the scientist who'd led the initial examination, the man who'd touched the corpse more than any other living person. The journalist picked up the phone. It took 5 attempts before Spindler answered. When he did, his voice was tired but patient. The journalist explained his theory carefully. 3 deaths, all connected to Ötzi, a pattern emerging. What did Dr. Spindler think? Was there any possibility, any chance at all that something supernatural was happening? The silence on the line stretched out. Then Spindler laughed. It was a dry sound, academic, tinged with genuine amusement. He explained as if to a student that science deals in facts, evidence, rational explanations. Curses belonged in fairy tales, not in reality. The deaths were tragic but unrelated, nothing more than terrible coincidence. Then Spindler said something else. His tone shifted slightly, almost playful. Almost. He said that if such a curse existed, if Ötzi really was reaching beyond death to punish those who disturbed his rest, then logically Spindler would be next. Who had violated the Iceman's peace more thoroughly? Who had spent more hours examining the body, cataloging it, studying it? If anyone deserved supernatural retribution, it was him. So if the journalist was right about this curse, well, this would probably be their last conversation. Both men chuckled. The call ended. The journalist made a note of the date. 4 months later, the phone rang again. Konrad Spindler was dead. The multiple sclerosis he'd managed for years had suddenly, inexplicably worsened. Complications cascaded through his system faster than doctors could respond. At 55 years old, the man who'd unlocked Ötzi's secrets was gone. The scientist who joked about being cursed, dead. The journalist sat at his desk staring at his notepad. 4 names now. 4 deaths. The pattern wasn't invisible anymore. It was screaming. And somewhere in a climate-controlled facility in Italy, kept at precisely -6 degrees Celsius, Ötzi lay silent and still, unchanged, waiting. The body that had rested undisturbed for 5,000 years, now pulled from its frozen grave and put on display. A murder victim, violated again. And the list of the dead kept growing. Helmut and Erika Simon wanted justice. They'd discovered the most important archaeological find of the century and received nothing. No recognition, no compensation, just a front row seat while others became famous studying their discovery. Under South Tyrolean law, they were entitled to 25% of any artifact's value. The law was clear. Ötzi was priceless. Do the math. Provincial officials laughed in their faces. The body has no commercial value, they said. Here's 5,000 euros. Symbolic payment. Take it or leave it. 5,000 euros. For Ötzi. For the Iceman who'd spawned 1,000 documentaries, museum exhibitions, scientific papers. 5,000 euros for changing archaeology forever. It was an insult. Helmut and Erika refused. They hired lawyers. They went to war. Then 2 other claimants crawled out, saying they'd found the body first. The Simons were just photographers, they claimed. Liars. The case exploded into chaos. Multiple parties, conflicting testimonies, everyone fighting over the frozen corpse. The legal battle consumed years. The stress mounted. The fees piled up. But the Simons kept fighting. This was their discovery, their right, their vindication. 12 years. 12 years of courts and lawyers and appeals. Finally, November 2003, the verdict came down. The Simons won. 300,000 euros. Justice at last. Helmut was 67 now. Erica, 63. They'd waited over a decade for this moment. The money would secure their retirement, validate everything they'd endured, give them peace. They would never see a single euro. October 2004, Helmut decided to go hiking, the same mountains where he'd found Ötzi 13 years before. He knew these peaks intimately, had climbed them his entire life. At 67, he was still fit, still careful, still experienced. Weather looked fine, nothing he couldn't handle. He kissed Erica goodbye, said he'd be back by evening. He shouldered his pack and left. Evening came. No Helmut. Midnight, dawn. Still nothing. Erica called the authorities, voice shaking. Within hours, rescue teams deployed. Helicopters swept the peaks. Experienced climbers searched every trail. They called his name until their voices gave out. Days passed. How could he simply vanish? He knew these mountains better than his own home. Where was he? Day 8. A searcher spotted something at the base of a cliff. Something that made him stop breathing. Helmut Simon lay 300 feet below, partially buried in ice and snow. The fall had killed him instantly, but it was the location that made the rescue team go silent. The ice, the mountains, the frozen burial. Helmut had died exactly like Ötzi. The man who discovered the Iceman had met the same fate. Frozen, alone, claimed by the same peaks. The coincidence was impossible, terrifying, wrong on every level. The official report said accident, slipped, fell, died. Happens in mountains, tragic, explainable, nothing supernatural. Just an old man who misjudged the terrain, his age catching up. Bad luck, that's all. Just terrible, random, meaningless bad luck. But the media knew better. Curse claims discoverer screamed every headline on Earth. Iceman's revenge. The journalist who'd interviewed Spindler years before sat at his desk, staring at his list. 5 names now, 5 deaths. And the most important one just got added. Not someone who studied Ötzi, not someone who filmed him, the man who found him. The person most responsible for disturbing 5,000 years of frozen sleep. Dead. Buried in ice. Just like the corpse he'd discovered, Erica Simon became a widow at 64. The 300,000 euros meant nothing now. Blood money. Curse money. She would have burned every cent to have Helmut back. Then, 3 days after they recovered Helmut's body, someone else died. Diet Van Nieker was 45 and built like granite. As head of the mountain rescue team, he'd saved countless lives. Pulled bodies from avalanches, plucked injured climbers from impossible places. He was strong, healthy, seemingly indestructible. When Helmut Simon went missing, Van Nieker led the search. For 8 days, he coordinated teams, directed helicopters, refused to give up. And when they finally found Helmut's frozen corpse, Van Nieker was there, helped secure the body, helped bring him down from the ice, touched the man who touched Ötzi. That evening, Van Nieker sat down for dinner, put his fork down, clutched his chest. His wife screamed. He collapsed face first into his plate. Massive heart attack. Dead before the ambulance arrived. 45 years old. Perfect health. No warning, no previous symptoms. His doctor would later say it was impossible. Men that age, that fit, don't just die. But Van Nieker had. Hours after touching Helmut, days after Helmut had touched Ötzi's resting place. 6 deaths now. The world went insane. Every news outlet wanted the story. Reporters hunted down anyone who'd ever been near the body. Scientists, museum staff, officials. The questions never changed. Do you believe in the curse? Are you worried? Will you be next? Some refused to talk. Others laughed, but the laughter sounded hollow. A few admitted quietly that they'd thought about it. Late at night when logic slept, they'd thought about it. Tom Loy thought about it. The Australian biologist had spent years analyzing Ötzi's DNA, studying the blood traces on his gear. His work revealed the violence of the Iceman's final hours, the murder, the fight, the arrow. Loy knew Ötzi more intimately than almost anyone, understood his death, his blood, his last moments. In 2002, neighbors found Tom Loy dead in his Brisbane home, 63 years old. The door was locked from inside. No signs of struggle, no clear cause. The investigation went nowhere. Another unexplained death. Another scientist who'd gotten too close. 7 deaths across 13 years. The skeptics kept fighting. They had statistics. Hundreds of people had worked with Ötzi over the years, they said. Researchers, guards, technicians, officials. Hundreds. Only 7 dead. That's actually lower than normal mortality rates. This is coincidence, probability, mathematics, not magic. But the believers had their own numbers. 7 deaths among the inner circle, the ones who touched the body, examined it, disturbed it most directly. Museum guards weren't dying. Casual researchers were fine. Only the ones closest to the corpse. Only the ones who'd violated his rest most completely. Those were the ones dropping. A journalist finally got to Erica Simon. 1 interview. That's all she'd give. She sat in her home alone now, aged beyond her years. They asked about Helmut, about the discovery, about the curse. The final question came carefully. Did she believe Ötzi had killed her husband? Erica was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her words made headlines worldwide. She said she didn't know about curses, didn't understand supernatural revenge. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Finding that body had destroyed her life. 12 years of legal battles, mountains of stress, fighting, suffering. And now Helmut was dead, frozen in the same ice that had preserved the man they discovered. She said if she could go back to that September day in 1991, knowing everything that would follow, she would have walked past that corpse without stopping, would have left it buried, would have let the dead rest. She started crying then. The interview ended. Somewhere in Italy, in a climate-controlled facility kept at precisely -6 degrees Celsius, Ötzi lay unchanged, silent, preserved exactly as the glacier had preserved him for 5 millennia. Scientists still studied him, still photographed him, still published papers about his life and death, still disturbed his rest daily. And some of those scientists kept dying. The pattern held. The list grew. The curse, if it was real, showed no signs of stopping. 5,000 years he'd waited in the ice. 5,000 years of frozen sleep, interrupted. And the dead, it seemed, have long memories, longer than the living can imagine. The body lay still, waiting, patient. After 5,000 years, what's another few decades? The killing wasn't finished. November 1922, Valley of the Kings, Egypt. Howard Carter's team broke through the sealed entrance to Tutankhamun's tomb. 3,000 years of undisturbed rest shattered. Inside lay treasures beyond imagination. Gold, jewels, and a mummified pharaoh. The discovery made Carter famous worldwide. His backer, Lord Carnarvon, became a celebrity. They'd opened the greatest archaeological find of the century. Then they started dying. Carnarvon went first. Months after entering the tomb, a mosquito bite became infected. Fever consumed him. He died delirious in a Cairo hotel, 57 years old, whispering about the curse. Over the next decade, more than a dozen people connected to the tomb died. Sudden illnesses, bizarre accidents, unexplained causes. The curse of the pharaohs became legend. Ancient warnings, hieroglyphs promising death to tomb robbers, supernatural vengeance. Science eventually explained it. Sealed tombs breed deadly fungi. Bacteria multiply in darkness for millennia. The archaeologists inhaled spores their bodies couldn't fight. The curse was biological, not supernatural. Mystery solved, except it wasn't. Poland, 1970s. Archaeologists opened King Casimir IV's tomb, sealed for 5 centuries. Within weeks, researchers fell ill. Respiratory failure, fever. Several died. Again, science found answers. Sealed chamber, dangerous spores. Same pattern, same explanation. 2 famous curses, 2 biological causes. Case closed. But Otzi doesn't fit. The Iceman wasn't sealed in a tomb. No enclosed chamber breeding pathogens. He lay exposed on a glacier for 5,000 years. Wind, ice, the harshest conditions imaginable. No concentrated spores, no single biological agent. And the people who died, they weren't exposed to the same thing, didn't show the same symptoms, didn't die the same way. Car crash, avalanche, brain tumor, heart attack, cliff fall, multiple sclerosis, unexplained death. 7 completely different causes. No biological link. No shared pathogen. Just one connection. They'd all touched, studied, or disturbed a 5,000-year-old murder victim. That's it. That's the only thread. The skeptics have their answer ready. Statistics, they say. Coincidence. In any group tracked over time, some die prematurely. Mathematics. Nothing supernatural. We're pattern-seeking creatures who see connections that aren't there. Apophenia. The human brain finding meaning in randomness. 7 deaths among hundreds of people over 13 years. That's normal. Expected. Tragic but meaningless. That's the rational explanation. The one that lets us sleep. But here's what bothers people. The deaths weren't random across everyone involved with Otzi. Museum guards, fine. Casual researchers, alive. Random officials, no problems. The deaths clustered around the inner circle, the ones who touched the body most, examined it most intimately, disturbed his rest most completely. Those are the ones dying. Still coincidence? Maybe. Probably. But it feels wrong. 2005. 1 year after Helmut Simon's death, a molecular archaeologist named Albert Zink took over as head of the Institute for Mummies in Bolzano, Italy. His job? Study Otzi, get close to the body, extract samples, run tests, become intimately familiar with the Iceman. When journalists asked about the curse, Zink laughed. He was a scientist, dealt in facts, evidence. He'd heard the stories, sure, but curses weren't real. He'd be fine. Then strange things started happening. Equipment malfunctions during critical tests, data corruption on multiple computers, a car accident that nearly killed him. Nothing definitively supernatural, nothing you couldn't explain away. But the timing, the frequency, the way problems clustered around his work with Otzi. Zink stopped laughing about the curse, started being more careful, more respectful. He's still alive, still working with the body, but he doesn't joke anymore. 2008. Documentary filmmaker discovered preserved footage from the 1991 recovery. Raw material never broadcast. The camera captured something strange. As workers freed Otzi from the ice, a sudden storm rolled in. Clear skies to whiteout conditions in minutes. The team had to evacuate, leaving the body partially exposed. The storm lasted exactly 3 hours. When it cleared, the ice around Otzi had refrozen differently, making extraction even harder, as if the mountain itself was fighting back. Meteorologists called it a freak weather event, unusual but explainable. Mountain storms can develop quickly, nothing supernatural, but the timing, right when they disturbed the body, right when they violated his rest. Here's what we know for certain. Otzi was murdered, shot in the back, died fleeing into mountains, wounded, terrified, alone. His final moments were violence and pain and fear. Then ice claimed him, froze him in that instant of death. 5,000 years, locked in trauma. We broke that seal, dragged him into museums and laboratories, made him a specimen, a curiosity, an exhibition. And people died. You don't need to believe in ghosts to find that disturbing. Don't need supernatural explanations to wonder if some things should stay buried. Maybe it's not about curses. Maybe it's simpler. Maybe violating the dead carries weight we don't understand. Maybe history, especially violent history, has momentum. Maybe past trauma, when disturbed, affects the present in ways science can't measure yet. Or maybe it's exactly what it looks like. 7 people got too close to something they shouldn't have touched. 7 people disturbed rest that should have remained undisturbed. 7 people paid a price. The body still rests in Italy, -6 degrees Celsius, perfectly preserved. Scientists continue their work. New technologies, new discoveries. The research never stops. But something has changed. Researchers are more careful now, more respectful. They don't joke about curses anymore. Some wear protective amulets, though they'd never admit it publicly. Some avoid touching the body directly if they can help it. Some complete their work and never come back. And occasionally, very quietly, another name gets added to the list. 2016. Australian archaeologist who'd analyzed Otzi's stomach contents died suddenly. Stroke, age 59. 2017. German researcher who'd mapped the Iceman's tattoos, killed in a hiking accident. The list keeps growing, slowly, steadily. The pattern holds. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's just life. People die, especially people who work in dangerous fields, who travel frequently, who push themselves hard. The rational mind says there's no connection. The rational mind is probably right. But late at night, when rationality sleeps, other questions whisper. What if we're not supposed to disturb the dead? What if pulling bodies from their graves carries consequences we can't see? What if the past, when violated, demands payment? What if Otzi, murdered and unavenged 5,000 years ago, still wants justice? Science has no answer for those questions. Statistics can't explain the clustering. Biology can't account for the variety. Coincidence theory struggles when coincidences pile this high. So we're left with uncertainty, with 7 names, maybe more, with a frozen corpse that's killed more people in 30 years than in 5,000 years of frozen sleep. The believers see a curse, clear as ice. The skeptics see randomness, nothing more. And the truth, whatever it is, lies in that silent space between, in the frozen darkness where Otzi waits, patient, still, unchanging. In the end, maybe it doesn't matter whether curses are real. Maybe what matters is this: we found a murdered man. We pulled him from his grave, put him on display, made him famous, and people connected to that violation keep dying. Call it curse. Call it coincidence. Call it whatever helps you sleep. But the list keeps growing. The pattern holds. And somewhere in Italy, kept at -6 degrees, the Iceman lies silent, waiting. After 5,000 years, he's learned patience. After 5,000 years of frozen sleep, interrupted and violated, maybe he's earned his revenge. The dead keep long accounts, and time means nothing to those who have eternity. Ötzi isn't finished. The curse, if it exists, hasn't ended. It's just waiting, watching, counting. And anyone who gets too close, who touches the body, who disturbs that ancient rest, they join the list. One way or another, eventually. 7 deaths so far. How many more before the Iceman sleeps peacefully again? How many more before his 5,000-year-old rage is satisfied? We'll find out. We're still counting, still watching, still dying. The Iceman's curse isn't a story. It's a body count, and it's not finished counting yet.